Hi, Nia.
Hi, Kaia Ra.
I
Hi, community.
want to I wanted to welcome you to today's Path of the Initiate membership live stream. We're so happy to have you today as one of our special guests. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't met Nia Whitehorse, at one of our amazing events for the Sophia Code movement, Nia helps us with the jewelry. She's one of our team angels, and she's been a big part of the movement and a very dear friend to me over the years. So I'm so happy to welcome you here to today's live stream, Nia. And the reason why Nia's here is I invited her here to share about something that she experienced quite some time ago. And as I just shared on YouTube Live, what Nia and I are going to talk about is to bring some historical context to deep state attacks. It's, as many of you have read in the article that I shared in our community forum, what happened in Maui has been going on for a very long time. And the purpose of bringing Nia on to share about an experience that she had is to help us understand how to recognize universal signs of deep state attacks so that when we are watching the propaganda, watching the fact checkers, watching the systems that are set up to shut down the truth, you're going to be able to see through that and recognize that these kind of attacks have been happening for quite some time. So Nia, I just want to thank you for your courage to come on and talk about something that is extremely difficult to talk about. Would you like to share about when this happened, when your experience happened?
Sure. So my experience happened in October of 2002, so almost 21 years ago. And it happened on the island of Bali in Indonesia.
And do you want to talk about what happened at the incident?
Sure. Yeah. What parts do you want me to talk about? Just the overall event?
Yeah, I'm sure it was called something in the news.
Yeah, so in the news, it was called the Bali bombing. It happened in a kind of tourist hub of the island. It was sort of the heartbeat of where a lot of locals and travelers would come together to surf and enjoy, just enjoy time together. And there were a few night spots in the area, and the bombings what they called the bombings happened on a Saturday night. It was when it was very, very busy. There were lots of people coming through, and I was there. I had walked down the street and gone into a little cafe to listen to some live music, and there was a first blast that was quite small. We thought it might have been an earthquake because there were a lot of earthquakes in that area. And then maybe a minute later, there was a huge blast, and it knocked all the electricity out, knocked us out of our chairs onto the floor. And then we realized what happened went out. And when it was okay, I walked closer and closer to the scene. It was just nothing. It was just, I had a hard time understanding what was happening because there was just nothing left. There was nothing there. And I spent that night into the early hours of the morning there. So I witnessed a lot. And a lot of people were talking how it was a laser directed weapon, even that night, people that were there. But as the days and weeks transpired, it was all reported to be a bombing, and it was blamed on terrorist groups. And so there was a real misalignment in what was happening. Even in the news, I knew things being reported were not exactly what had happened. Even the total amount of people that perished in that incident was not in alignment with what I knew from people there, like in the hospitals afterwards. So it was very confusing, to say the least.
To survive this atrocity where life was happening in abundance, and all of a sudden life was just gone, and then you were told a lot of lies about what you experienced.
Yes. And it was, there was a part of me that was still grappling with the reality of what I had actually witnessed and seen, because it's hard for you to take that in, especially in a place of vibrance and youth and joy, and then to have that happen so suddenly, unexpectedly, not in a place of war that you would expect it maybe to happen. So that part was shocking, but then just trying to work through it and find people to talk to about it, people that were there and experiencing it. Some of them were willing to talk about it, but for some of them it was too painful. But then to try and sort through the reality of what had actually happened, what people were saying versus what the news was reporting, was challenging, because a lot of people, especially back home, they just wanted to believe what the news was saying, and that was fact. So there was suddenly a wall erected, and I felt very lonely. I felt like I had no one to talk to, because the people that had been through it were too much in their own pain, and the people that were outside of it didn't believe anything that I was saying. So it was it was a very dark time, I would say. And I'd say it was, that feeling of loneliness and isolation and like, am I crazy, was something I experienced a lot at that time.
So you start to even begin to second guess what you actually experienced to be true for you.
Exactly. So I would say, when you're working through something like that and you experience something like that, now that like what the people in Maui are experiencing and what so many people have experienced, it's hard to sort through so many feelings, because then you're also dealing with survivor's guilt.
Yes.
And when you're mixing in survivor's guilt, the darkness of what you've witnessed, of what humanity is capable of, and then the confusion of like, was this intentional? Did people do this on purpose? Was this, and then, but in secret at the same time, like hiding in plain sight, you really question what reality is. It's and there's nobody, it seemed like, especially at that time, I didn't know who to reach out to. I didn't have a community like this where we could speak truth. So yeah.
God, thank you so much for everything that you're sharing. I know that there's going to be so many people in our community that can relate to this. We have so many people who have survived the California fires, are surviving fires in Canada right now, our Hawaii community, and we know that there's been so many earthquakes and floods and fires all over the world in our community, in Australia and different parts of Europe, Greece, Turkey. So what you're sharing is very, very helpful and so needed. And I'm so grateful to you for your courage. I remember the first time you shared with me what had happened. I remember like almost like needing to like poke to see if you would even talk about it. Do you remember that?
I do. And I think, well, I know that came from realizing soon after the event, all I wanted to do was talk about it, because it was like this black, dark hole inside of me that I needed to sort through, but nobody wanted to talk about it. And I came home a few months later and met with some of my closest friends, and I would start to talk about it, and they would shut me down immediately. They didn't want to go there with me. They didn't want to hear about it. They didn't want to help me process it. And I just needed someone to hear me speak my truth of what I experienced. But it made people very uncomfortable.
So then by the time we met, and I kind of had an intuition that it was a deep state attack. I didn't know when I first started asking the gravity of what you had experienced. I could just feel intuitively it was there. Chances are good that you were so used to being shut down when asked about it that maybe it was just like, just too hard to talk about it at first.
Yeah, it was difficult to talk about it because I hadn't practiced. I had written a lot about it because that was my only outlet. I was like, well, if nobody will listen to me,
yeah,
I can write. I can't have this inside of me. So, you know, that was a great practice for me to get it out through a creative outlet, painting, writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that, after I had, you know, exhausted writing about it, rewriting about it, I sort of locked it away inside of myself and, you know, locked it away with a key and tucked away the key in a place that I forgot where it existed. So it's like, in order for me to talk about it, like when we talked about it, I really had to go searching within myself. Like, am I really going to do this? Because in addition to the pain of that kind of experience, there's the added pain of not having anybody want to listen or go to that dark place with you. But it's so important, especially seeing what's happening in the world. You know, pain is pain, suffering is suffering. You can't like tier it and one person's, you can't say one person's suffering is deeper than another person's suffering. Suffering is suffering. And you know, love is the antidote to suffering. But it's like you have to connect and be able to listen to the hard truths, be able to express the hard truths so they're not rattling around inside of you, because it can be a destructive black hole within if you don't bring it forth to the light and give it voice.
Mm-hmm. It must have brought up a lot for you to see the similarities between what Maui looks like and what it looked like in Bali. Was that surreal for you?
It was, and it's still hard for me to even see the pictures of what's happening there or what has happened there, because I don't see it as any different than what I experienced. I mean, obviously I'm not there, I'm not going through that pain, but I can't help but feel the pain for everyone and what they're enduring, what they're going through. Their losses are so immeasurable. And to see the similarity of like the burned out cars and the land destroyed and decimated, and just the heartbreak and almost disbelief of like, is this really real happening in the people who have survived it? I feel very deeply for them. And there's a part of me that knows in a tiny little way, like I understand what they're going through, and just sending them all the love in my heart, because it can be a long journey if they don't get the right support. And even if they do get the right support, it's still a long journey of healing, and can have ripple effects for decades, maybe their entire lives, you know, and both the land and the spirit of the land and the spirit of the people and their hearts, all feeling it.
Thank you so much for being so courageous and taking this opportunity to help us put this horrific atrocity into context with an ongoing war that we're all facing, and help us step a little bit more boldly into the truth through the sharing of your very, 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 I don't even know what the right word is, like the experience of atrocity that you experienced. I don't want to even call it sad. It's not sad. It's beyond words to quantify what those kind of experiences are. So thank you so much for your service and for choosing to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. If any tiny drop of consolation comes, or just from the ability to hear one another, witness one another, helps in any way, like we're here for one another. We're here in this together. We can create a better world. I know it, but we have to shed light on these dark places and talk about what's happening.
Yeah, I just feel my heart expanding so much wider just hearing what you're sharing. Yeah. And I know that other people listening feel that as well. So thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching live. We're about to head over to the Heaven on Earth Prayer Collective, where we're going to pray for both Maui and for Canada, which is currently under attack. So thank you again, Nia. We love you so much. Really appreciate you coming live today with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaia Ra. Thank you, community.